In February 1987, looters broke into the Huaca Rajada pyramid complex in northern Peru. With picks and shovels, they emptied one of the richest tombs ever discovered in the Americas in a single night. Gold ornaments, silver regalia, and gilded copper objects disappeared into the black market before sunrise. Necklaces were dismantled bit by bit. Pottery, worth far less to traffickers, were smashed apart and discarded like rubble. What the looters left behind was a single boot-shaped hole cut into the pyramid floor. A few weeks later, archaeologist Walter Alba arrived at the site after police confiscated several suspicious artifacts. What he found was chaos. Local villagers were sifting through the spoil heaps with metal screens, searching for fragments the looters had missed. The archaeological context, the exact position of every object, every body, every layer of the chamber, had already been destroyed forever. But beneath the damaged tomb, there were others, still sealed, still intact. What followed became one of the most important excavation projects in the history of Andean archaeology, and completely transformed our understanding of the Moche culture. The man buried inside Tomb 1 became known as the Lord of Sipán. Archaeologists soon realized he was not simply a ruler. He matched almost perfectly a role repeatedly shown in Moche ceremonial art. The warrior priest, known by specialists as character A of the sacrifice ceremony. The identification was extraordinarily precise. The crescent-shaped gold headdress, the large circular air spools of gold and turquoise, the ceremonial back flap, even the trapezoidal scepter held in his right hand. In Moche imagery, this role appears receiving a goblet filled with the blood of sacrificed prisoners. For the first time, an artistic representation from Moche pottery seemed to correspond to a real historical individual. Tomb 2 revealed another presence linked to the same ceremony, the bird priest or character B. He was buried with an old headdress whose metal feathers moved independently, and with a copper goblet placed in his hand. Then came Tomb 3. Older by nearly 2 centuries, it contained what archaeologists now call the Old Lord of Sipán, buried with a necklace of golden spiders carrying human face on their backs, associated with the decapitator, a violent supernatural being tied to prisoner sacrifice in Moche iconography. Before Sipán, most scholars interpreted these scenes as mythology. Supernatural beings, ritual violence, blood offerings, processions of hybrid creatures. After Sipán, many of those scenes no longer look mythical. They look political. The rulers themselves had embodied the ritual roles represented in Moche art. What once seemed symbolic fantasy now appeared to document a militarized theocracy where power, sacrifice, and religion were inseparable. And the evidence extended far beyond costume. Chemical analysis of residue inside Moche ceremonial goblets tested positive for human blood proteins. The vessels shown in Moche art receiving sacrificial blood had, in fact, contained sacrificial blood. The tombs also contained human attendants buried beside the elites they served. In Tombs 1 and 2, guards had their feet amputated before burial, ensuring they would remain eternally at their post. Elsewhere in the complex, archaeologists uncovered deposits of severed hands and feet matching the scenes of dismemberment shown on Moche pottery. One recurring object appears constantly in these sacrificial scenes, a strange fruit known as uyuchu. For decades, scholars debated whether it was real. Then Tomb 3 produced physical examples preserved inside ceremonial banners, but the mystery only deepened. Some researchers argue uyuchu belonged to the Meliaceae family and functioned symbolically, associated with fertility and sacrifice. Others believe it was a fruit with anticoagulant properties, used to keep sacrificial blood liquid during prolonged ceremonies. The debate remains unresolved, But Sipán confirmed one thing beyond doubt. Uyuchu was not imaginary. It was a central ritual object within Moche religion. The arrangement of objects inside the tombs reveal another layer of meaning. Everything followed a strict logic of duality. Gold objects were consistently placed on the right side of the body, associated with masculinity and the sun. Silver objects appear on the left, associated with femininity and the moon. This balance reaches most refined expression in bimetallic objects. The famous peanut necklace from tomb 1 contained 10 gold peanuts and 10 silver ones. The transition between metals occurs exactly at the center of the chest. The same principle appears in the ceremonial back flaps, divided perfectly in half, gold on one side, silver on the other. The ruler was positioned as the point of balance where opposing cosmic force converged. The artisans who created these objects were masters of an astonishingly sophisticated metallurgy. They hammered ultra-thin metal sheets. They soldered complex components. They used load wax casting to create moving mechanical ornaments with articulated parts. And they developed something even more extraordinary, a form of electrochemical gilding. By dissolving gold or silver into corrosive mineral solution, Moche metalworkers could coat copper objects with a thin layer of precious metal before heating them at temperatures between 500 and 800 degrees Celsius, permanently bonding the surface to the core. Europe would not develop comparable techniques until the 19th century. But these objects were more than technical achievements. Some scholars believe they were inalienable possessions, objects created specifically for a single ruler under strict ritual conditions. They could not be inherited. They could not be reused. They had to die with their owner. Where a pattern on air spools, scepters and regalia show they were actively used during public ceremonies through the ruler's lifetime. These were not decorative ornaments. They were extensions of ritual identity itself. And because every successor required an entirely new set of sacred objects, the system fueled a constant cycle of artistic patronage that helped drive the extraordinary development of Moche metallurgy. The story ends where it began, with the looters in February 1987. The wood-shaped hole they carved into the first tomb destroyed the original chamber forever. The objects taken that night lost more of their historical meaning the moment they were removed from their context. A necklace bead without context cannot tell us whether it lay on the right or the left side of the body, whether it belonged to a ruler or an attendant, whether it formed part of a cosmic duality of gold and silver. Without context, an artifact becomes aesthetic merchandise. Its knowledge disappears. Everything we now understand about Sipán, the warrior priest, the ritual use of blood, the symbolism of duality, the role of Uyuchu, the sacred identity of Moche rulers, came not from the objects alone, but from their relationship to bodies, architecture, and space. That's the difference between looting and archaeology. Not legality, not technique, knowledge. Because some answers only exist once, and once their context is destroyed, they are gone forever. If Sipán showed how ritual power was built through blood, sacrifice, and spectacle, the Marquis of Zeng shows a very different answer to the same question. Not how rulers control bodies, but how they try to control the universe itself. You can watch that story next.